Welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast. I'm your host, Sal Interdonato. The Black Knight Nation podcast is sponsored by Higher Echelon. Higher Echelon is a company run by Joe Ross. Joe Ross, former Army football player, former Army assistant coach, former Army officer. We thank Higher Echelon for sponsoring this podcast. Steve Anderson here today, co-host with us. Steve, before we start with our very special guest, do we have I think you had a birthday that just passed, possibly. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, last Monday, man, I turned 34. And
Jackson,
the back and knees feel it for sure. But it doesn't help that I'm still every bit of 235 too, and I'm still running 5 miles. So that definitely doesn't help. But yeah, no, it's good. Another, very blessed, 34 years old. Your wife, 3 kids, man. It's good stuff.
I call it the Bo Jackson year, I guess, right? I mean, that's the first 34 I can think of when I think of that number. I always, you hear the Jordan year 23. But let's welcome our special guest tonight. This is somebody we want to have on for a while now, and we got Caleb Campbell on. Caleb, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight.
Gentlemen, thanks for asking, and thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And Steven, happy belated birthday.
Yeah, man. It's good seeing you, Caleb.
You too, brother.
Yeah, so normally when we start these podcasts, we kind of get to the path to West Point and basically, how you discovered them or how Army discovered you. I mean, I guess, Caleb, when you came in, is it late Todd Berry or is it Bobby Ross when you recruited?
Yeah, so Todd Berry and his crew, God, I wish I remember the tight end coach that actually recruited me from Todd Berry's team. So you might know, I'm not for sure, but
I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, he was who recruited me. And then when I went to prep school, which was it was in Eatontown, New Jersey. We went to school in freaking trailers. Honestly, RV trailers were our school. And that's when Barry got fired and Coach Ross came on.
Wait, just so I got that timing down. So you were recruited by Todd Berry and his staff, the tight end coach specifically. How long at prep were you there before? Was it right after that football season or
yeah?
What?
I think it was right at the end of the football season. I remember being in the gym with John Wright. You guys remember John Wright?
Oh, yeah.
And we were talking, and Brian Chamorro was there. And we were talking what are we going to do? Todd Berry recruited us and brought us in, and now, a new coach is coming in. He's going to probably have his own guys. And so we were having a hard conversation. I think we were really just looking for any excuse to quit and walk away.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, we stayed.
Yeah. The theme from a bunch of Army football players is, every day you think about leaving. And then somebody says something, and you end up staying another day, and another day turns into a week, a year. But what was that? What was the recruiting process like, Caleb, for you? As far as what made you? Was it prep not costing you any time if you could feel it out? Did they tell you were prep early on in the recruiting, or is that something that came later?
Yeah, there's a thing called ACT scores, Steve.
I know. Hey, you talk. I'm right there with you, Caleb. All right, I'm right there with you. So,
I did not score too high, but honestly, I actually grew up in the Panhandle of Texas, so at the very top of Texas, that little Panhandle, 7 miles south from the Oklahoma border, and at that time, there's been a lot of work that has been done to make that a kind of more established area for recruiting. Because at my time in high school, nobody came to the northern Texas part of the state. Everyone could fly into Dallas, they can fly into Houston, they can fly into the south parts of the state and find all of the recruits they needed. And so it was just happening year after year where any 1, 2, 3 recruits that might be coming out of North Texas just would get overlooked. I originally had a Division I offer to Tulsa, actually. I went and visited Tulsa. I love Tulsa. And then again, a coaching change happened. And essentially they had offered me a scholarship before I went to Tulsa. And that was my only other D1 school. And then I got a phone call from the new coaching staff basically discouraging me to go. if I can remember correctly. Essentially, kind of like they couldn't rescind the scholarship, but they were kind of discouraging me to go because they did have their people that they were bringing in. And then about that time, I started getting recruited heavily from West Point, and I took a visit to West Point. And I don't know if, as a young kid that's always had a deep desire to do something meaningful and to live a significant life and to make something of myself. And really just to get out of my small town that had this perpetual cycle that seemed to take place where you graduated our hometown, you got caught up in the oil and gas industry, and you found yourself staying in the hometown. And the next thing you know, you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and you're dying there. And there's no shame in that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think my mom, which, she was very adamant on you're getting out and you're doing something with your life. And so I think it was equal balance of me desiring to do something significant, doing something with purpose and doing something meaningful versus my mom telling me, bullshit, you're going to West Point. And that kind of started the journey.
What, so after the coaching change and Bobby Ross is coming in, where do you think you fit in there? How does that work out? How does that transition work out?
I have no idea. Actually, at prep school, I sucked at football. Like, I was terrible. I think I was having a hard time adjusting to that lifestyle. It's funny. I'm trying to think back at that time. It was just hard. I was miserable. I was this really just deeply wounded boy. And this was my first time being away from my home. And I felt just very vulnerable and exposed. And this is really all throughout my college experience and into my adult life for so many years, just not having the tools or the awareness to know how to navigate that uncertainty, that vulnerability, those social and emotional challenges that I was living with. And so when I got to prep school, I sucked. Can I curse on this podcast? I just sucked. I was terrible. And so I honestly had no kind of idea of where I would fit or if football was going to be something that I would continue at the academy.
Go ahead, Steve.
I was just say the common theme, and you mentioned a couple of guys earlier, is, and what we see is, guys, it's obviously always hard to leave your hometown. I was lucky enough. I was from Maryland. I was a 5-hour drive. So, I always took guys back with me, got them back to the home life, kind of my parents were always, willing to have multiple people over and stuff. And, you mentioned Chimera. I remember Brian and some of those guys. I don't know exactly who was with you at prep, but I remember that senior class. And I have to kind of, the theme is those guys kept you there. Or there was something that was built during that year where it was either, all right, I'm going to try it next year, or there was something that wasn't finished as far as like you said, I know I'm better at football than what I just showed at the prep school. Like, I can give West Point 1 year, and then I'll leave, right? That's kind of like the thing. So what was it about the prep or, looking forward to going 1 year at least at West Point? Because I feel like that's how a lot of us attacked it, Caleb, was, basically cutting a tree, right? You try prep school. All right, I didn't really enjoy this, but I got through it. So I'll try 1 year at the academy and see how that goes. All right, well, that wasn't so bad. I mean, it was bad. It sucked, but at least Mike's here and Brian's here and stuff like that. So just from your perspective, what was it at prep that kept you?
I think that's a big part of it. That's a good question, Steve. I actually grew up, I don't know how much y'all know of this, but I grew up in a very hyper-spiritual evangelical culture. Did not drink, did not party, did not do anything that would ultimately disqualify me from, my perspective back in that day, disqualify me from really fulfilling God's purpose for my life. And because I had such rigorous standards when it came to my faith in high school, I was extremely bullied. I did not have too many friends. I really didn't have any friends. I was, and by all intents and purposes for this conversation, I was a loner all through my high school. The only time people really loved me was when I was scoring a game-winning touchdown or leading us to a state championship or to the state finals or whatever it was. But there wasn't a moment that went by. As soon as I walked off of that field, there was shit that was going on, and that took a really big toll on my life. And I remember when I was leaving high school, I was having a conversation with someone. I had never drank all throughout high school, and I remember opening up a beer with this one guy, and I looked him in the eyes, and I just kind of said, I'll do whatever it takes to belong. I'll do whatever it takes to fit in. And that was a really big moment for me. And I tell you that little bit of context because when I got to West Point, or when I got to the prep school, I remember standing in the doorway of Brian Tremora's room and just having a conversation with him and being like, I'm out, man, I'm out. And he just looked at me. He's like, bro, let's go through the first semester together. Like, let's just go through the first semester together. And let's just see how it works, And there was a moment there where I felt like I belonged. I felt like I had found friendship. I felt like, I didn't have to do life alone anymore. And there was that deep belonging dynamic that I think really anchored me in a place where I would just, like you said, Steve, like just kick the can down the road and let's just go one more day. Let's go one more day. Let's go one more day. Miserable as fuck, but let's just go one more day. And so I think it's that dynamic of finding friendships, finding and feeling like I finally belong somewhere. That was monumental in my life at that time.
And like you said, kind of earlier, and I don't know how true this is, or if you're just your hardest critic about you didn't play very well at prep. People, like you said, people want to be around success. They want to be around, players that are doing well. So for you to know that Brian was coming to you as truly as someone that you connected with, not because of how you played on football, feel that was just maybe one thing, but it's like truly like whatever it was through, cadet candidate or whatever it was out of the academy, whatever class you guys are both looking at each other at, statistics or whatever they, what was it, intro to like algebra at the prep school or something. It was like something you take in high school or something that prepared you for your first year. But I didn't experience that, Caleb, but I can imagine just like that moment, like that, almost like, that pivotal moment in your life where you're like, oh man, like, so this is what it feels like, or this is something that I definitely want to continue to see where this goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it caused a lot of challenges down the road at West Point where like I found my group, like I found my boys. And like I was very, very gatekeeper of our friendships because I didn't want to let anybody in that could jeopardize my sense of belonging in my little community. And that obviously it becomes really toxic, and I portrayed several toxic tendencies during that time at school. But yeah, I think this idea of belonging, and I think there is something about the brotherhood, I think it's not just speaking to, cadets necessarily at West Point. It's speaking to the deeper nature of what every core human desires, and it's to find belonging in life. It's like, who am I, where am I, or who am I, why am I here, and like, where are my people at? Like truly, where are my people at? Because I think there's something that's so beautiful and magical that happens inside of us when we find ourselves in a group where we can find our people, because what's happening when we're with our people is they're mirroring back to us who we are. They're helping us see who we are as we stand in community, as we stand in relationship. I mean, it just speaks to the profoundness of relationships and of community. And while I would have never been able to articulate it like that during that time of my life, it's apparent to me that's why it was so powerful and what kept me at that school.
Yeah, that's it's impossible that, even at what, you're what, 37, 38 now?
37, yeah.
Yeah, 37. 37. I'm 34. Like the guy I was at 18, 19 years old. He wouldn't have a wife and 3 kids. That's for sure. By, self-infliction and, just being able to, be around. But, it's good to, when you reflect and you see how you evolved, through friendships. One of the hardest things that I continue to go through at West Point was, my community, people saying this isn't for me. every year. It was either a linebacker buddy or it was somebody that I got close with that, I was at class with or school with.
Saying it wasn't what for you. What do you mean?
Like they left the academy or left prep school.
Oh, okay.
Right. And now I'm like, man, what could I have done to keep him here? Or man, we all want to leave. Like, that's not the point. The point is we chose to do this together. Anything like that. One guy gets kicked out for grades. One guy gets kicked out for this. One thing, anything like that. It's kind of like when you talk about a gatekeeper or like keeping close hold on your inner community. That's what makes me think about, I wasn't so much like, my problem is I let anybody in my community. Now there's a piece of me everywhere, and now I don't know who I am.
That's good.
First, and then I let them in, I give them a piece of me, and then they leave, and I'm like, I'm never gonna get that back. So, it's just funny hearing, a guy came 3 years, 4 years ahead of me going through the same thing, and it's just a common theme that we hear. So
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, now back to what's up, Sal. What do you got? I know you.
I was just going to say, by the end, right, Caleb, your senior year, you were a captain. So by the end, but from your start to finish at West Point, there is certainly a period of growth there for you, no doubt, right? And not just on the field and off the field. So
yeah.
That's what I was going to ask.
I think I was more so just a bully.
Hey, Caleb, I'll be honest. Now that we got you on the podcast, I told this story. Who was it? 2 weeks ago or something? 3 weeks ago? I forget who.
John Voight, probably. I think John Voight, probably.
Yeah, John Voight. I was telling him, it was my freshman year, your senior year, and I had just got moved up to like second string or third string, and I got like 8 plays, like where you saw it, right? Like where I wasn't like on down with like the I or H or whatever club or whatever. I got like 8 plays, right? And I got in the cold tub, and I had just gotten in the cold tub when you had come in, and you were like, "What'd you play for like 5 minutes today, man? Get out of the cold tub." And I was like, "All right, I'm good. I got in. All right, I got my rehab. I'm good, man."
Something I would say.
Oh man.
But Caleb, I will have to say, your senior year was my first year on the beat, the full time on the beat. And I don't know if you remember this, but every week you would give me your Heisman Trophy top 5. And during the season, you also helped me out big time, where you gave me a list, the full roster. I asked for Caleb, so what are some nicknames on the team? And you're like, well, I think I can get you more than just a couple. You came back with like a full sheet of nicknames for just about everybody on the roster that I wrote a story about. And it was my one that I remember the most is Tony Tow Truck Dace as one of them. And I'm trying to think of a couple others. I think that team have Chase Presnicki on it or no? And
Chase,
yeah. So Nitro was one of them. Yeah, I think maybe Fitty might have been for Steve. Maybe
no. Fitty wasn't. Fitty was not born yet. Coach Lyles did not dummy Fitty. The one you got to remember is Bonesaw. All right, Charlie Rockwood.
Oh yeah.
Bonesaw is ready. Bonesaw is ready. So I'm actually.
That's so good.
I'm working for Rock's old boss. He's my battalion commander, and I talked to him right before I got to the unit. And I was like, "Bonesaw, what's up, man?" He's like, "Oh, I haven't heard that forever."
Dude, I remember him getting a sack and just being like, That's so funny. I haven't heard that in a long time. I don't remember that, Sal. Thank you for sharing it, though.
No. I mean, I was going to say for a first year in the beat, you were the go-to guy for me. Now you had, I think, was VD your other captain that year or no? Yeah, you were more of my go-to guy. I go to Mike, and yeah, you got a little bit more like, you get a little bit more juicier quotes from you, Caleb. So to speak.
I like to blab my mouth.
Yeah, I don't know if he was the oldest. No, he's not the oldest, but you had Jay Trim. Jeremy was a captain, I believe, because that was my freshman year.
Oh yeah, and it was Tony Fusco.
Fusco, yeah.
Fusco, yeah.
Which is I think that was just his 11th year, right? 2011 is when he passed last week.
Yes, it was recent.
Yeah, wow. It was last week, or it could have even been yesterday, to be honest, because I was still.
Yeah.
That was my. I remember that going down because I was still there when that all went down. So yeah, Tony, J Trim, VD Strong, right? We had VD Strong everywhere in the stadium, and then Caleb. So
yeah, that was good.
That senior class was a good group, and you guys, I mean, that was Stan Brock's first year, right? So I mean, that was a more transition for you guys, right, Caleb? I mean, you're being recruited by Barry's guys. You got Bobby Ross as your coach for a couple of years, and then Stan Brock your senior year. So
yeah, now that you say that, there was a lot of like, how do you ever develop momentum when you're in so many transitions, you know?
Well, Caleb, I mean, that was your experience. You're 4 years ahead of me, right?
Yeah.
Then my experience was, at prep school, Bobby Ross is a coach. That's your junior year, right?
Yeah.
So senior year, going into my freshman year, Stan Brock gets the job. And then my junior year, right, Stan Brock loses the job, and then Coach Ellerson comes in, right? So,
Coach Ellerson, oh, wow.
We're talking a decade now of, every couple years we're changing coaches. And it's no surprise we, 7-6, 5-7, 3-9, right, for the better part of a decade. But before we get too crazy with his senior year and everything, and we start forgetting about it, I want to hear about Caleb's freshman year, because it's very hard to go through basic training. Well, I'll say cadet basic training. You lose weight. You don't have, you lose your fast twitch. You don't really have the ability to make a huge impact, even though there's a bunch of guys under Coach Muckin that'll tell you differently. I don't know. They had to have changed it. I don't know. But coming in and making an impact as a freshman is tough. So, kind of like how did that happen? New coaching staff, and then how'd you kind of come on the scene your freshman year?
Yeah, man, I have not, like, this is great to actually have these conversations. I'm listening and I'm like trying to reminisce at the same time. It feels so fucking long ago. And Steve, like, you get hit in the head one too many times, you're suddenly like, how old am I again? Yeah. But my freshman year, man, it was a hard year because I got in a lot of trouble with John Wright as my roommate.
Wow.
John
Wright to me was like the first Ted Bentler, right? Like he was the scariest. He was the scariest, craziest.
Yeah, just out of control.
You did not want to cross, and you wanted to just make sure you stayed out of his way if you could as an underclassman. But go ahead.
Yeah, so what happened was that was my freshman year. And so at this time, my freshman year, I think, was the first year that your basic or your what is it, boot camp?
Beast Barracks. The company that you're in, you usually get like scrambled and you go somewhere else. But I think my freshman year is the first year, maybe, I think, where we went into Beast Barracks, and the company that we were in for Beast Barracks, we stayed in that company throughout the year. And I was like the only cadet in the academy that had to get transferred to a different company because John and I made some pretty dumb decisions that landed us in trouble. But in regards to football, I think I walked over 105 hours my freshman year, my plebe year. But in regards to football, I'm trying to remember. It was honestly kind of, I don't know what the hell happened. I remember my first ever play was against Louisville, opening kickoff. And man, I don't know, Steve, who your equipment guy was. Was it Nick Dieterman? Was Nick there already?
Yeah.
Okay, so my freshman year, I don't think Nick was there. It was a different guy. And he was, God bless him, but a dumbass. Nothing on me fit. Like, none of my equipment fit. And I just remember standing on the opening kickoff, and my helmet, it was like a new air helmet, and it was like this big face mask, and I'm like moving in it, and I'm like trying to push it up so I can see where I'm running. And it was against Louisville, and it was the opening kickoff, and I remember making that first opening tackle, and I remember getting up and being so fucking dazed and confused, like, what just happened? I'm trying to get fired up, and I'm like, did I just do that? But I didn't play much my freshman year, just special teams until midseason. What happened was against Cincinnati, and y'all will remember that game because it was like the first time we fucking won in like 19 games or something. And so we were playing Cincinnati at home, and Michael Resnick was like the GOAT. He was the big safety. And then there was Rob Davis, who was another safety. And then all of a sudden, right before halftime, I think I was fourth string. And all three guys, and it was the whip position because we were in a 3-4 at that time. It was the whip position, and all three guys went down with injuries. And I just remember, I can't remember who the damn coach was, but looking at me and be like, "You're in." And it was one play before halftime, and I came up, I filled the outside third, and I made the tackle for, I think, a tackle for loss. And then we ran into halftime, and I'm thinking like, okay, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And honestly, I don't know if the fucking stars just aligned, but I came out and I had an incredible game. I remember, we were winning, we were up, and then they run a screen on the other side of the field from where I was, and he just takes off and he's going to the house. And I remember hawking him from the other side of the field and punching out the ball from behind and forcing a fumble. And that fumble basically secured us the game. But it was so funny, though, because I remember after forcing the fumble, I like jumped up to try to like high five. And one of the Cincinnati guys was like running towards me, and he just plowed me over. He like caught me in midair, and my feet came out from underneath me. But I was so jazzed. And I guess I say all that, I'm rambling a little bit, but that second half of that Cincinnati game that we went on to win, I had like 6 or 7 maybe solo tackles. I had a forced fumble, had a PBU. I played really well. And so I think I got a big vote of confidence then. But then I remember next week we were going to Miami and playing, was it USF? Sal, maybe you remember? Playing. Yeah. I think we were playing USF, and I remember John Mumford, and like I'm the starting whip now. And I cannot get the defense this one play for the life of me. And he has to stop the play and start it again, stop the play and start it again. And finally is like, "Caleb, what the fuck?" And just reams me in the middle of the field. And I start crying. Wow. I literally started crying. I had an emotional breakdown. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not the guy for the job. And even like during boot camp or even during Beast Barracks, I remember Chris Grievous and Sean. Is it Sean and Chris? Yeah. Grievous, the twins, like they would study my position to help me out. Like I honestly did not understand football. Like I truly did not understand football. In high school, all I did was fucking run fast and score touchdowns. It was like literally pitch to the left, pitch to the right. And so I never understood football. And so I remember going into USF not having much confidence. And it's the first time I'm starting. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that I had over 17 missed tackles that game.
Wow. It was South Florida, by the way. It was South Florida.
Okay, yeah, South Florida. So I had more than 17 missed tackles. It was like debilitating on how embarrassing it was. And I just got the shit kicked out of me. And watching film that next day, I ended up staying, kind of starting and playing the rest of the season because of those injuries. And then I remember my freshman year ended with what was the Navy fullback that got looks. He was a senior. He was getting looks in the NFL.
Kyle Eckel, probably.
Kyle Eckel. Yeah. And the only thing I remember is meeting him in the hole, and I was on the cover of the fucking Philadelphia Herald or whatever it was, on like my back, like getting plowed over, and Kyle Eckel has the football, and his head is down, and it was like Eckel crushes for the win or something like that. And that was like my freshman year. So, it wasn't looking very hopeful. It honestly wasn't looking very hopeful.
In between, you had a good start, and I'm sure you're just being a little modest. There were some good games in between, the South Florida and, and the Navy game. You played probably the second half, so you had 6, maybe 7 games under your belt. Which is huge. I mean, and that's Caleb, and that, and this, like, that's how you build teams, right? Like not necessarily out of injury, but you have young guys that get those reps, and then you have them for 3 years, and they don't make those mistakes, over and over again. I don't know this to be a fact, but I doubt you missed 17 tackles in a game the rest of your career. You know what I mean?
I was looking. No, I never did that again. But I was looking at the schedule. We had Cincinnati, and then we went to South Florida, which we actually ended up winning against South Florida. Aaron Alexander had a hell of a game, and then CJ Carlton-Jones had a hell of a game. And then we played East Carolina, Air Force, Tulane, UAB, and then Navy. I honestly, the only other game I remember was East Carolina, and I vaguely remember that game. But I think getting some reps, definitely to your point, Steve, like getting some reps, getting kind of, finding a little bit of flow, and feeling more and more comfortable in my skin and in my pads on the field. That was really pivotal for me.
Yeah, it's what makes me, keep going back to golf, right? I shoot 100, but I hit a couple fairways and I make a birdie. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm coming back, baby. I got this. I'm gonna have a couple more. It never happens, but it's to the same point, right? You miss 17 tackles, but you have a PBU, right? And you're like, okay, yeah, I can. You have those things that are like, yeah, I can play. God, film's gonna suck tomorrow, but there's a couple of plays in there that kept you coming back. And I know you say it was through injury, but and I remember Rob, because Rob was one of our coaches at prep school, and he was great. I mean, he knew the game as a coach could tell you the game. Sometimes you could get coaches that are they just tell you to run faster or be stronger, and you're like, I don't have that capability. Like, how do I get smarter?
I can honestly tell you, like, contributing to my success as an Army football player was like Rob Davis and Taylor Justice.
Oh yeah.
They were incredibly talented and gifted football players, and they knew schemes. They knew the schematics. They understood football, and they taught me a lot. And so I can say that, like, most definitely, and even just playing alongside Jordan Murray, especially, going up, like, he was fucking good. And so there was just this constant, like pouring into me. So I'm definitely grateful for those gentlemen.
Yeah. So when your sophomore year, right? Man, things were a little rough to start, but you guys got a little bit of a win streak that year. I saw you guys won 4 in a row, and that's also the year where you took a ranked Iowa State team to a touchdown game too. So, I mean, it starts to get a little bit more competitive. I'm guessing you're feeling a little bit more comfortable with the defensive schemes too, I'm guessing, sophomore year.
Yeah. Sophomore year. Yeah. I'm looking Iowa State, Connecticut, Central Michigan,
TCU. You guys beat Air Force that year?
We beat Air Force that year. I remember that game because I think I almost set like a national record for the most amount of tackles in a game. I think close to 20 tackles. But yeah, I'm trying to remember what clicked, honestly, in my sophomore year. I know that we got our ass whooped at Boston College. And then when Baylor came to town, that was my first ever collegiate interception. I think I still got the football somewhere, actually.
Nice.
But my sophomore year was like my standout year. Something shifted. I understood football. I felt like playing safety and changing the defense and giving me 10 to 12 yards off of the ball, and then having some quickness and having some change of direction and speed. I just felt like really, again, everything kind of just fit, and I think when it comes to football, even especially in the league, goddamn, like everybody's fast, everybody's good. But finding the right spot, the right scheme with the right players at the right time, like that's where real success happens. That's where things just really go to the next level. And I think I found that starting my sophomore year at Army, and unfortunately never found that in the league, along with some other things. But yeah, it was good. It was a good sophomore season.
Yeah, I remember there being a lot of not necessarily grumblings, but there was some nervousness about you really deciding to leave after your sophomore year because you had, either whoever was talking to you or whatever you're being told, like, hey, like you're gonna end up in the league. You have the size, you have the speed. You can't do that at West Point. So why don't you just come all over to Rutgers or you don't have to move very far, or maybe go back down to Texas. I don't remember. Obviously, at your sophomore year, I was still in high school, and I didn't know West Point that well yet. But once I got there, I kind of learned what you went through, just from you and some other older guys, and from some coaching staffs about just how back and forth that going into your junior year was.
Yeah, my sophomore year again, I got in a lot of trouble, did some stupid shit. A group of us just did stupid shit, and I got in trouble. And I think at my sophomore year is when things got really challenging for me, emotionally speaking. I was experiencing success on the football field, but I was a ticking time bomb when it came to my emotional capacity. I remember, honestly, just to talk about this, I hated my life. I had a lot of suicide ideation. I didn't want to be there, but I felt trapped. I didn't feel like I could leave. I felt in leaving, I'd be disappointing everybody, especially my parents. And then I kind of referenced it earlier. There was also this dynamic that, I was fulfilling God's plan for my life. And so to walk away from West Point was ultimately to turn my back against God. And that was the way I kind of saw the world that day. And so I was able to harness my rage and my sense of self-hatred in a way that really fueled me on the football field. But my sophomore year is kind of when it started to bleed out and bleed over into my everyday life. And I remember, one day having to leave class because I was kind of so angry about something and having an emotional break. And I asked the teacher if I could go see the doctor. I went and saw the doctor, and the doctor told me to go see a school psychologist. And I remember walking in, and we had a conversation. He said, sit down and talk with me. And he asked a series of questions, and he says, Caleb, has anybody ever told you that you are depressed, and you're dealing with massive clinical depression? And I was like, no, what are you talking about? And he said, I would love to prescribe you something to help you with this. And, in this moment when I should have been like, okay, this is going to help my emotional wellness, this is going to help my mental health. This is good for me. Okay, doc, tell me what I need to do. I only asked the doctor one question. I said, are these pills going to take away my rage? That's the only question that I asked him. And I remember that like it was yesterday. I said, are these pills going to take away my rage? And I remember looking him in the eyes and him looking back at me and looking kind of perplexed or a little confused and do you not understand what's going on in your life right now? Truly, do you not understand? And I went back and I dumped those pills down the toilet because I could not jeopardize me losing my rage on the football field because I felt like that was my kind of my magic potion. That was my magic touch, was having this absolute rage and hatred towards life. But unfortunately it was my sophomore year that like I said, started to bleed out and bleed over. And I walked around feeling like an imposter every day of my life, especially at West Point. But my sophomore year is when it got really bad, where I could tangibly feel like I was losing control and I was coming undone. And I was so afraid because I was so deeply wounded from everything that I experienced in my early childhood, which I talk extensively about now, and even throughout high school and being bullied and all the suicide ideation I dealt with in high school. There's this wounded little boy inside of me that's now being hidden behind this facade of a great college football player. And I spent every day afraid that people would see this wounded little boy. And so I had to use my rage anytime I felt vulnerable, anytime I felt threatened. And this is why I was the gatekeeper with friends, because I couldn't allow somebody to fully see me, because if they saw me, then they would see the fraud that I knew I was. And so I am the least self-aware person you've ever met in your life at this time, the least self-aware person. And so I can't communicate this all I feel like is I'm a ticking time bomb. I guess I say that because, you have somebody that is now, after my sophomore year, the 7th ranked, I think I was 7th ranked strong safety in college football. And that is when I hit the draft boards. That is when agents started calling and teams started asking. And I started kind of asking questions like, hey, what can I do? Like, is my childhood dream of getting into the NFL actually a possible, like, is it actually a reality for me? And people started telling me yes. So, Steve, I went on a little rant there. But anytime I get a chance to talk about mental health, I think we should be talking about it.
No doubt.
But I went on a rant, but I was in this place where I was like, should I leave? And I remember after our sophomore year, we had the sophomore training. What is it? So after our sophomore year and going into our junior year, we had that moment before taking the oath, before saying like, we're in for the long haul here. And I was just going back and forth. And again, it was that place of belonging. There was something that was just keeping me there. Like I couldn't walk away. Like I knew that there was something in me that knew because I wanted to quit so bad, I couldn't quit. Because when is that going to stop in life? When is that going to, you're setting a precedent in your life of like, shit, when things get fucking hard, you're out. And so there was something in me that just said, you know what, I'll stay and I'll go the distance.
And, I don't think I ever got to the point, in high school was probably the only time I think I ever had a suicidal ideation. And that was when I was going through, I got kicked off my football team. I had to change high schools, the dreams of being a college football, just not understanding the big picture in life. Was probably the one time I remember vividly, but, just like you, I kind of had a breakout year my sophomore year against Texas A&M in the big house, whatever. And then I got, in that whole year, I was already in trouble from that summer, like thinking I was going to get kicked out as soon as the season was over. Same thing at prep school. I got in trouble at prep school for drinking. So I had to be on, I was basically, grounded for 3.5 months. And I was like, dude, I'm a grown man. Like nobody grounds me. Like I don't even live at home. How am I grounded? Yeah. And wanted to leave then. And I was really strong about leaving. And then I wanted to leave after my sophomore year really bad because I was like, man, I know as soon as this football season's over, I'm going to get hit. And this place is going to go from terrible to unbearable. But I had that same thought, Caleb, where it was like, I wasn't going to leave before I got in trouble. All right. And then what made matters worse is my spring of my sophomore year, I got named captain. So then I was like, oh, man, I'm stuck. Like, I can't leave now. If I leave, there's going to be a whole newspaper article. It sounds good, right? That I left for whatever reason because I got in trouble. And then once you leave, right, you got no voice. I won't be able to tell my story once I'm out of the academy. So I felt a little trapped, even though I think kind of like you, Cam, deep down inside, I knew I belonged there. And, like, this is where I have to be successful because – like you said, you got in trouble. Like if you went to a regular college, I don't know if my sophomore, junior, senior year in football ever happened. I don't know if I ever, become the player I was if I didn't have that structure and kind of those my buddies keep me accountable. Like we need you.
Absolutely.
So I told and obviously yours was your situation was more severe, and someone telling you you're depressed when you're 20 years old for the first time, and you're like, this is the way I've been living for the past 6 years. What do you mean? It's just life. That had to have been just kind of like, you're sitting back like, no, nobody's ever told me that. Thanks. And then before, I'd never heard that story about them prescribing you the pills or if this is going to take away your age, but right now, Caleb, as you're telling that story, I knew you weren't going to take those pills at the end of that story. Just because of who you were at the academy and just kind of like just hearing the way, how you've got to that point in your life. I was like, man, there's no way he went back and took those. 20 years old, like you said, like the draft boards are calling, man. Like I can't jeopardize any of that. Like this is life.
I honestly didn't know how to live without feeling so angry. Yeah. Like I used to listen to that song by Eminem called Rabbit Run. And man, that motherfucker is so angry in that song, like so angry. And I would walk, and you see, like you have to walk from class to the fucking buses and get bussed up to the stadium every goddamn day. I would just put that on repeat in my ear over and over and over just to get me angry and get me going. So
and you're already angry because you got to walk everywhere in those low courses, man. Like my knees and ankles I'm already pissed off about that. So So what and you might have mentioned, I just want to kind of bring it back. What you were taking that oath. Who are you with? How did it go down? Did you actually do it that day? Did you wait? I have a couple buddies that couldn't go to school that first week.
Really?
And like, dude, I need more time. I was like, dude, you've had 2 years. Like, come on. Like, I know you're coming on Friday. All right. So just come on. Don't.
Yeah, I took it. Work. I remember I took it. I was with Chewy and Jordan and Rock and Elliot. And I ended up taking it. And truthfully, after I took it, I got my shit together for the most part. My plebe and yuck year were the more challenging years for me when it came to discipline, just because of the pressure that I was internalizing and that rage that I was internalizing and that bleeding over in my life. And it's not that went away. My junior and senior year, I just knew that I could not fucking get in trouble. Like, you get kicked out now, like you're screwed. And I knew I had 2 battalion boards, 2 brigade boards. And so there should have been some things, either the discussion of being turned back or released. But honestly, it was kind of, with football. And just when people caught wind that I was going to try to leave, I knew who was the athletic director.
Kevin Anderson.
Kevin Anderson kind of stepped up and stepped in, and we had a long conversation. And so I kind of got my shit together for the most part, or I held it together a little bit better. I hid a lot of things a little bit more efficiently. But yeah, my junior and senior year. My junior year, I blew out my knee though.
Yeah,
and that was a setback.
That was at Air Force, right?
No, that was at Tulane.
Oh, that was at Tulane. That's right. Okay.
Yeah, we were playing down there.
Did you play Air Force your junior year?
I can't remember if I did play or not.
That was the week before. Tulane was the week before Air Force.
Yeah.
That's right. I just remember how I just remember my freshman year. I remember us at Air Force your senior year, and kind of like all the background, all the outside noise that when you only play special teams you can listen to because you're not playing a lot. Like about how important this game was for you because I couldn't remember if it was like the last game you played the year before or the game you missed or something like that. I just remember that being a significant kind of headline around your senior year because everyone was ready to watch you, fill the alley again, coming down from strong safety and stuff like that.
And I didn't. I definitely didn't. Yeah, I miss Air Force and I miss Notre Dame and I miss Navy. I remember Notre Dame though because Brady Quinn was the quarterback of Notre Dame at that time, and Jordan Murray had picked him off. And it was like Brady's first interception in like several hundred pass attempts or something. He had just set a college record or was setting a college record, and Jordan ended up getting an interception, I think, on a tip ball.
Well, let's not forget old Brian Chmura picking off Matt Ryan. That
Boston College.
That's one of my favorite memories looking back as a freshman on that team. Just Chewy picking off Matt Ryan, and then 14 years later, just seeing how that played out. So
that guy, I just talked to Chewy today. He would probably still talk. We would still talk about that shit. We'd make fun of him for because afterwards. For whatever reason, he jumped up to like celebrate, and this guy he got like 2 inches off the ground.
I remember you guys making fun of him back then for that.
Yeah, that was like our big thing that we made fun of him for. But yeah, and then senior year, I think what was the senior year? I had some good games, and I played good football. My senior year, I think there was like Tulsa.
Yep.
That was a good game. That was my senior night, but that was a lot of fun. But then again, Army or against Air Force and Navy, I just got the shit kicked out of me during those 2 games.
The team that you guys had, right? Your senior year, Steve, and you were a freshman on the team. There was some talent on the defensive side. It's just some, I don't know.
No, I think it was, like we talked about earlier, Sal. I mean, it's Coach Brock's first year as head coach. He had to fill in some gaps as far as like coaches leaving. For the most part, right, it was an in-house hire. So a lot of the guys stayed. But, it's kind of like, at least for me, this is the only thing I know about Army football, but there was definitely just, at least what I experienced as a freshman was there was a lack of identity in that locker room my freshman year. As far as like, this is, what kind of, we had shinebackers in the locker room, but like only like half the guys wanted to be shinebackers. I don't know. It very small aperture, right? From when you're a freshman, role player to by the time you're a senior where you're talking to everybody about everything, everyone's asking your opinion. From where I was like, look, this is, I told Coach Ellerson, like, hey, this is what our team is going to be. Like, we can't mess this up. Like, I know it's your team, coach, but we cannot mess up this identity that we have. Like, we are assholes and we believe we're better than everybody. Like, don't try to mess that up. Like, by saying, like, whatever, motivating us by saying we haven't won anything yet or whatever. Like, we're going to believe we're going to win every game. So, not having a lot. And, Caleb, I don't know if Coach Brock brought you into those conversations or, I know you had a pretty good relationship with Kevin Anderson. I had a good relationship with Kevin, who's out here at Air Force, right? I'm in Colorado Springs.
Oh, yeah.
I'm out here in Colorado Springs. I saw you got hired at Air Force Academy, and I'm like,
oh wow.
I actually hit him up. I hit him up on LinkedIn, and we just never. We haven't been able to set a date, but I want to go up there and have lunch with him and just catch up. So, but yeah,
that's
anyway,
awesome.
back to that, Caleb. The senior year was it was frustrating for me as a freshman, like just kind of like, man, it was almost like an underachievement year where there's definitely games we could have won.
Yes.
That, we just didn't know how to.
Yes. Yet. There was that season too. That was the miracle at Mikey's season, right? That Tulane game, and you think that would have gave you guys maybe a little bit of a spark, but then. I'm looking at the schedule. Central Michigan and Georgia Tech were the next games. Then
Central Michigan was a heartbreak. We should not have lost that. Georgia Tech, we got our ass kicked. They were a good football team. Rutgers my senior year. The Thursday night game against Ray Rice on ESPN in
was that
rain.
That was a sleet rain. Yep. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Ray Rice. I remember that game because I actually played defense because we were getting beat. And I tackled him for loss, and I was like, man, this is easy. Next play, I hit him at the line of scrimmage, and he ended up with a 9-yard gain with me around his ankles at the end of it, but I hit him up high. But another funny story about Georgia Tech, I think they had – who was the receiver they had? He had like 3 catches.
Yeah.
He had like 3 catches for like 160 yards and 3 tugs or 2 tugs. It wasn't – I keep wanting to say it was Calvin Johnson, but I don't think it was Calvin Johnson.
No, it wasn't.
It was I forget, but it was a beast. But I got hit. So I was on kickoff return team, and I got hit so hard from their second string linebacker. Talk about rage. This guy was like, should have been their starter or something. He got in trouble, whatever. He hit me so hard that when I got hit and my legs went up in the air, I pulled my hamstring because my leg flung up so fast. And I was like, oh, man, that's bad. So, but, yeah, their receiver was dirty. I swear he had like 3 receptions for like 150 yards, and then he was out. Like he didn't play the rest of the game.
Well,
I remember him, but I can't remember.
They
his
had
name.
that. What linebacker they have? Aaron. He was like a number 4 pick that year. Aaron.
Yes.
No, it wasn't Aaron Maben. I forget, but he was a hell of a linebacker too.
They had Demaryius Thomas on that team, and they
yes,
also had
that's who it was.
Choice.
Demaryius Thomas.
Yeah,
Demaryius Thomas.
Choice. Yeah.
Yep, there it was. Good.
Tashard Choice. He was the running back, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that guy was good.
No, he was fast as hell.
Yeah, that guy was good.
So,
what? That senior year, right, Caleb? Your senior year is over. Then during the year, are you getting a little bit about? Are you getting NFL? Like, are you getting agents NFL attention that year? I'm guessing you are, right? And what? Talk us through that and what happens at.
Yeah. So that was just like a very. And I don't know how many people like know this or what. At that time, I got invited to the combine, and agencies are walking around campus. I remember, now it was Athletic Resource Management, who's merged with CAA now. But there was a various agents that would come and they would talk to me and they would bring me to what was the cadet little convenience store that we had on campus?
Oh, it wasn't the C store. What was that called? Oh my God. It was right above Gold Coats. It was above Gold Coats.
Yeah, right there. They would bring me there and like we'd sit down and have a Coca-Cola or some shit. But this is living the dream, y'all. But I was getting recruited heavily, but at that time also I was having conversations with Patrick, General Finnegan, and I can think back of times when I'm sitting at a table and the soup is there, the comm is there. I think the comm was General Caslin, wasn't he the comm at that time?
Yeah. Was it Finnegan or I guess Hagenback came later then?
Hagenback was there as the soup.
Yeah.
I think Caslin was a comm.
Yep, he was. He was a comm for that first semester.
Yeah, and he was into it. Like he really supported like all of this. He wanted it. But I can tell you, like there was countless conversations and like me sitting at a fucking table with 6 colonels, 3, 4, 5, 7, 6 stars or whatever it was, and them telling me like this is how it's going down. We're going to create the space for you to go play in the profession and to go play in the NFL, and this is how we're going to do it, and so on and so forth. And there was part of me that was kind of in this place of there was some friction inside of my own heart, knowing that we're a country at war, knowing that I'm not going to be following the path of my classmates and ultimately the way where I did sign up. But then there was also a part of me that was so excited to fulfill this childhood dream. And that's when like a lot of the tension kind of really started to pull at me, Sal, emotionally speaking. I remember I got, hold on, let me see if I can find this. I got a letter. I have it on my computer somewhere. I remember shortly after getting drafted, actually, I got a letter I got so much fan mail and so many people sending me, asking me to sign this or sign that and say this or say that to them or whatever. But I remember one day I got a letter and I thought it was fan mail. And I opened it up and it was a picture of Pat Tillman's grave. And there was another picture of a flag draped coffin. And then the first line was, "Dear Caleb, you're a coward." And they said, "I thought the C on your uniform that you wore your senior year stood for captain, but for your case, it stands for coward or cut and run." And he just went on for the next, 3 paragraphs and talking just destroying me. And it was his son's flag draped coffin that he sent and told me that, I recently heard that E60 did a special on me with Rachel Nichols. ESPN did the special called E60 with Rachel Nichols, and I had said something, and he said, before you leave the academy, he just kept on going on, whatever. But that's when like it really hit me, where there was this internalized pressure of my my time in the NFL and getting drafted, like this was no longer about fucking football. This was about me fulfilling my duty. This was about me giving back. This was my war to go into, my battle to fight, my war to win. Like this is the way that I was going to contribute, you know, to represent the United States Army and to be successful in the NFL. And that took a fucking toll, like a really big toll of I have not yet dealt with the rage issues. I haven't dealt with this feeling like a fraud. You know, every day people have these expectations of me now, arguably higher than ever before. And I'm trying to fight to live up to these expectations. But deep down, I don't think I have what it takes. Like deep down, remember, I'm just a fraud. I'm an imposter. Like I'm just waiting for the people and for everyone to find out the truth about who Caleb Campbell really is. And I was able to hide that all through those next 2 years behind my performance on the football field. But now we're talking about the big leagues. We're talking about the NFL. So my senior year got messy in terms of just, you know, going into the combine and getting drafted, but feeling all of this internal pressure build and build and build. And that took that pressure into my first OTAs. And that's when life got really, really blurry and messy and really just downright scary for me.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so we had OTAs my senior year, right? So before school even graduated, before we actually were commissioned, I went out to Detroit on weekends and had OTAs, and I got the shit kicked out of me. Fucking destroyed. I honestly played better football in fucking 7th grade. And they moved me to linebacker. I didn't know football. And this is embarrassing to say, like, I wasn't very smart. I remember them talking about like a defensive end being in a 7 technique and the outside linebacker playing off the defensive end. And, you know, if the tackle is in a 3, and I remember just being like, what the fuck are y'all talking about? Like, am I back in some sort of like, what's going on? Like, is this a foreign language class? So I didn't know football. And they moved me to linebacker, which is just like, you know, it's a much more technical and like more hands position. And I'm used to being 10, 12 yards off of the ball. And so it's this perfect.
That's the biggest. That'd be the biggest change from 10 to 12 to 6, 5 to 7.
And then playing with your hands.
No.
You know, like I never had to play with my hands. And so I wasn't transitioning well. And so I just got the shit kicked out of me. And then all the while I know I'm not going to make it on the team. And my draft story is the biggest story of that year. Like everybody's watching me, everybody's cheering for me. Literally at Detroit in OTAs, they would want to talk to the 1st round draft pick and me, the 7th round draft pick. And so I felt all of this pressure. And so I remember the day of my contract signing. Y'all know the story, but the day of my contract signing and whenever I got a call from my agent telling me to get to the stadium, like something happened. And I got to the stadium and lo and behold, the athletic director and Rob Marinelli and all the coaches are in the meeting room, and I go in, and then I hear Kevin Anderson on the loudspeaker of the telephone telling me that, hey, that policy that they put into motion your sophomore year, it's been rescinded and you have to return back to active duty immediately. I remember on the inside of me like fucking rejoicing, absolutely rejoicing, because I get out without being seen. I get out and I'm not going to be exposed as this athlete that doesn't have what it takes. Nobody's going to find out the truth about me yet, and that I'm just not who people think that I am. And so I remember Rachel Nichols from ESPN calling me, and I played the part, like I'm a soldier first. This is what I signed up for. And part of me believed it, but I'm trying to be America's hero here. Like I could play this guy that, duty first, and I can go to a bar and my story will be on the TV at the bar and everybody will buy me shots. And like, I get to be loved. I get to be accepted. I get to find my place of belonging on a grander scale. But I also knew in that time that, they told me that maybe after 2.5, 3 years that I would have the chance to go back and play again. And so I did make a decision, and I made a commitment to myself that I would be the biggest, the fastest, and the strongest I've ever fucking been in my entire life to make sure that when I got back to the NFL, I would be ready. Like I would be ready to play football. I would understand football. And so I did. For those next 3 years, I went through OBC and I went to my duty station. There was a lot of still a lot of dialogue happening, a lot of people telling me one story and me not knowing. Like when they told me I couldn't play, that decision was actually formally made 3 weeks before anybody ever told me. And they waited on the day of,
Why? Why did they do that?
I have no idea. I truthfully don't know.
I mean, as a guy that's done this for 12 years now, not including West Point, it's probably because they forgot they had anybody like in that situation.
Really? Yeah.
And then, someone, goes up to the Secretary of the Defense or Department of Defense, like, hey, we actually we have this guy signed in the NFL right now. Like, oh, no. Call them, call this. And everyone's scrambling to find, that conference room number to let you know, like, hey, you're not going to be able to sign today. And it's the convenience of you walking to sign your contract that day and it happening, and the Army's not above playing the PR game either. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They could have known, and they could have been, on phone calls with Detroit or inner workings, and hey, wait till Caleb's about to sign. Let's see if we can, if we can vanilla this or shape it a certain way. Everybody, it's just part of it's unfortunately, it's part of America where timing is everything. And, Caleb, you saw firsthand what happens, what kind of story can come out of the day you sign your contract and it's rescinded. So,
it's interesting to think about it like that. But yeah, I went back and served that time, and I got an early release, and then I got invited to a workout with Detroit again, and different coaching staff, different team, and I got signed on as a free agent, and I was ready. Like my free agent workout was powerful. Like they signed me right there on the spot. They're like, yeah, man, like my speed I was the fastest I've been. I was the biggest I've been, strongest I've been. And I was feeling good. I was really feeling optimistic. Even though there was still this like pent up fear and just insecurity just driving my life crazy, I was able to kind of like stay headstrong and be like, you got this, Caleb, you work hard for this. And I swear to God, I remember the first day on the field in training camp. I walked onto the field and I had this visceral moment of just this overwhelming sensation, this emotional response of fear and dread, and just swallow me whole. And I had a panic attack. I had a fucking panic attack on the football field, and I started to hyperventilate, and I ran over to the side of the stadium. This is training camp. People are like hundreds of people are around, and I puked. I puked all over the side of the field, and I knew right then, I was like, I'm fucked. And I realized that there was no amount of external work that I could do that could ever actually deal with the internal war that I was feeling, that I was experiencing, that I was going through. And so the next couple of years in the league, I literally, this is crazy, but I didn't actually want to play, but I wanted to be good enough so that I could stay on practice squad, so I could go out and be on the NFL roster, NFL team, and people would love me in the bar. I can pick up girls. I can do all the things that I want to do that would give me this sense of belonging, that would give me this sense of acceptance. But I didn't actually want to be good enough to play on fucking Sunday, because if I played on Sunday, that meant that I would risk exposure. Like the whole world would see me probably fail. And so I try to battle and to walk this line of tiptoeing back and forth, be good enough, not good enough, be good enough, not good enough. And I started to really, and I didn't know it at the time, but I started to really resent myself. And I started to really, really hate myself. I should be better. I knew I should be better. But I knew I was self-sabotaging, and I didn't know why. And that's when it really turned gnarly to just where drugs and alcohol became my way of coping. I'd be going on 48-hour benders, and then showing up to practice. I wanted a way out. And I remember after one night of partying after a game that I actually suited up for, and we all went out, and that party ended. And then I went to another after party, and it was like 6 a.m, 7 a.m. And I'm just doing a concoction of pills and drinking and just hanging out with these bums and thinking like, I found my people in life or whatever it was. And I remember having this cognitive moment, this thought of, Caleb, you're actively trying to kill yourself right now. because you feel so trapped, because you can't walk away, because this is your identity. This is where you found belonging. This is where you found acceptance. This is where you find life. You can't fucking walk away. This is everything. People are rooting for you. People are counting on you. But knowing that I can't keep up this facade, I can't like show up like this and live this lie. And I felt so trapped in my own life that I was actively trying to kill myself. And I remember like, holy shit, like there was this moment, and I call it the grace of God, where I was like, bro, you like, it's a matter of time before you take one too many pills and your parents are getting a phone call notifying them that their son is no longer there. And I hit all of this, like, because this is like, talk about like on the outside, I'm a West Point graduate. I'm an Army officer. I'm this Captain American football player that everybody is the underdog story that everybody's rooting me for. I'm a West Point guy. Like, I got it all together. I dot my I's and I cross my T's, but on the inside, I'm fucking going on 48-hour benders trying to cope with the pain of feeling like a goddamn fraud. And so it just got really bad. And that's when I ended up getting cut, from the Kansas City Chiefs. And my agent called and said, hey, the Falcons want to bring you in for a workout. Can you be there this weekend? And I just said, you know what, man, I'm done. I got to go figure out what the fuck happened to me. I got to go understand why I hate myself and I hate my life. I got to prioritize my mental health. Like, I can't keep living this way anymore. And that's when I walked away for the game for good.
Was it?
I mean, Caleb, all this stuff is it's powerful, man. One, because, not a lot of people know this about you, at least not, I know you're close friends, and I know through your work, you tell this journey. But this community, like you just said, who knows the Caleb Campbell from Army football, doesn't really know this. And I'm willing to bet there's probably dozens, if not hundreds, of players like you that have a facade, that don't know how or when or why to get rid of it, and still have that edge to play. And that's why you keep it, right? And that's why you kept it for so long, is so you could do it. So before we go on, I just want to say thanks for sharing this stuff, man, because
Thank you.
It really is, it's powerful. It's motivating. It's powerful that, a guy like you who, I was underclassmen, looked up to you, and you realizing this. And if you can get, guys to realize it sooner, it will save lives.
Thank you.
That's not just, we're not just talking West Pointers. I mean, this is, like you said, mental health is where a lot of the issues we have can be fixed if we start prioritizing it. So thanks for sharing that, man. And I guess the easiest thing to go to is what did you do next, man? Like, how did you break the facade? And was it just walking away from the game, or,
No.
I know you love what you do now. I know that. And I know it took some time to find that. So what was it like walking away from the game, and then the process of putting together, Caleb Campbell, the father that you are now?
Man, fatherhood's a fucking blessing, right?
Yeah.
So I left the NFL. I moved to my aunt's house. She had a big home in Colorado. I was living in the basement, and I was just in despair and self-pity, and just fucking, my life was just crumbling. Like, everything that I've worked so hard to maintain and to stay in control of, and to keep this facade and this image presented in this well concocted package, it was completely undone. And I was confused about, like, where's God in all of this? Like, what the fuck? Like, just so many unanswered questions. And I remember I had just opened up, honest to God, like my 4th bottle of red wine in my aunt's basement, and I'm a fucking mess. And I spent almost a week and a half or 2 weeks in a fetal position in a fucking closet. My aunt would just come and bring food to the basement because I was completely wrecked. And had no tools on knowing how to work through it. And I remember getting on my phone, swear to God, got on my phone, drunk as fuck, scrolling through Twitter. And I came across a series of tweets from a church in Canada. And they were talking about essentially, like, in Exodus, when the the Exodus, the exile, and then finding the promised land. And they were putting this beautiful words and imagery to these series of tweets. And it was the first time, I think, arguably ever in my life where I read something and I was like, holy shit, this is where I'm at in life. Like, they put words to my personal experience. And this is why I try to create content, or I try to do work to help people better understand their own stories, because I know when we can understand what's going on in our lives, we can find the courage to take the next step. It's the uncertainty, it's the unknowing of not knowing what's next that's fucking terrifying. But suddenly somebody comes around and defines or helps put words to your experience, you find a little bit of courage to move forward. And that happened to me. And I remember looking at this church and I'm like, who are they? Did not know anything about them. And I swear to God, within 2 days, I had everything sold or put in storage. And I packed everything that could fit in my car. And I drove from Colorado to Canada. And I walked into this random ass church that I've never met anybody from in my entire life. And I walked in and I met, actually, it was the pastor of this church. And I said, this sounds fucking crazy. I said, and I don't know if you can help me, but I feel like I'm supposed to be here. Can you help me? And he looked at me and he kind of got a smile on his face and he says, yeah, I think we can help you. I had no idea what I was signing up for. I just knew. And because at this time too, guys, like, I was getting job offers from a lot of former football players. You know, a lot of people flew me out, and, you know, like Stryker Med Cells, and these guys flew me here and flew me there. And, you know, I was interviewing, but there was something in me that knew that if something in me didn't change, like, it was just going to be another football. It was just going to be another NFL. I was going to find myself in a corner office with these high expectations and this demand to excel. And that pressure was going to cripple me at some point in time. Like, something in me had to change. And that's when I decided to move to Canada. And I walked into this church and honest to God, I became the janitor of a church. And I cleaned toilets and I helped old people to their seats. And I slept on a basement floor in a boiler room of the church on a 2-inch mat. In a little space heater for 5 years, for almost 5 years. And I went to therapy each week, and I started to unpack the childhood trauma and the pain that I had internalized into fuel and ambition that was actually pervading any ability to live a healthy and happy life. And I just started to connect the dots and better understand not only who I am, but why I'm here, and how I can really learn the tools that I can apply to my life when I'm feeling, you know, the anxiety or the panic or the dread or the worry or the depression, having these tools around my, you know, proverbial toolbox to better understand how to go through this journey. So I did that for about 5 years. And then I was kind of fully committed to, like, you know, anybody that ever walked through this church, you know, if they needed help, I would help them. Like, I was committed to stay there. And it's a small town in Canada. You know, like, I was willing to give my life to it. And I was sitting back in the back of a church one Wednesday afternoon, and we had just gotten done with a meeting because I was, like, on the leadership team at that point. And I had, like, no ties with this church any longer. And I really wouldn't even class myself as, like, an evangelical Christian. I think my faith has evolved into a different way. But I was sitting in the back of that church one day, and I remember, like, it's time to go. And I was like, wait, what? And it was the same voice, the same knowing that I knew to not go and pursue a career and to go to Canada to begin with. That thing came bubbling up inside of me, and I was like, it's time to go. And I was like, well, where the hell are we going? And then, long story short, a random person reached out to me on Instagram and flew me out to Los Angeles, and I worked with this business for a moment. But that's when I realized I was supposed to move to Los Angeles, and I would just continue to follow this journey of where's my heart leading me? Like, what's my body telling me? Where's my heart leading me? Where is love calling me next, so that I could deepen and root my life in a bigger experience of love and expansion and compassion and empathy, because this is where freedom is. I tasted freedom and I never want to go back. Like, I tasted it and I never want to go back. And so it's just been this ongoing journey of saying yes to my heart, of saying yes to what's next, of opening myself up and allowing myself to stand on the edges of my life and to feel that vulnerability and to learn how to heal the broken parts of me and the parts that have been so wounded, and to forgive myself and allow me to be forgiven by others, and so on and so forth. And so I've just kind of been following the journey of love and kind of following my heart ever since then.
What do you do now, Caleb? Are you doing this? Are you speaking? You're doing keynote speaking now?
I've been speaking for the last 4 years full time, actually. I started, a company picked me up. They found me on Instagram, and one company 4 years ago picked me up and started placing me in schools. So for the last 3 years, I was working with that company full time, and I would get hired as a speaker to go into schools and to really combat teen suicides and school shootings. So I'd go in and I would create these ecosystems of emotional safety, and I would engage and have these really hard conversations and necessary conversations with students to help them feel more seen, to help them learn how to process their own story and process their own pain, these social and these emotional tools that they can apply to their lives, not only so that it can change their lives, but so also they can start shifting the stigma around mental health inside of the school culture. So a lot of culture work inside of schools and a lot of one-on-one with students inside of schools as a speaker. But then for the last year, I've been heavily focused on corporate America, actually, in the intersection of leadership and emotional intelligence.
Yeah. And, the Army has kind of pushed that as well, right? You've seen, from the time when you first, stepped onto West Point and you talked about the military, and then, now, our motto is people first, right? And seek help, see mental health. I want to say that, we're getting there, but it's almost, for me, I feel like there's still so much stigma, and there's still so much kind of hidden secrets about mental health, where it's like, yeah, go get mental health. You'll be good, man. We totally understand. But the same people that are telling you that behind the scenes are like, okay, just making a note of it. Okay, yeah, he's got some things he needs to work out. And that's where that's just how I feel. And that's not anything, there's nothing behind it. I just feel like, unfortunately, as a society, that'll be tough to break, because it's been like that for 240 years. So
yeah, it's an uphill battle.
Yeah, but that's Do you still live in Los Angeles, Caleb?
No, so we moved to Los Angeles. We moved to Nashville. I was living in Los Angeles, and then I got invited. 12 people from around the country got hand selected and invited to Kentucky for a retreat for first-time book writers. And so 12 of us who were in the process of writing our first book got invited for this really massive retreat. 12 people, hands-on. They got publishers, they got editors, they got writing coaches, all came. And then I walked in and I met this girl. And then after literally a 3-hour conversation with her that night, I was like, holy shit, I just met my wife. I knew that I just met my wife. And she happened to live 3 miles down the road from me in Los Angeles, but we had never met each other. And so we got engaged, 5 months later, and married a few months after that, out in Joshua Tree in California. And then COVID happened, and all of our friends and community, they left and they moved to Nashville. And so we followed them to Nashville. So we're here. And
yeah, when'd you move to Nashville?
About 15 months ago.
Man, I literally I was at Fort Campbell last year. So when'd you move in there? February timeframe?
Yeah, February 1st.
Yeah, so we left in June of last year, so there was definitely some crossover that, whatever, but could have had a beer, I guess. But my wife loves, Fort Campbell surrounding area, and then she obviously loves Nashville. So
Nashville, yeah.
I got about, God willing, I got about 8 more years of this Army life, and hopefully I make it back to Fort Campbell at least once.
Nice.
If anything, just to make sure my wife stays happy. You know what I mean? No. But that is, man, Caleb, I honestly didn't know what to expect. And this has been incredible, man. That story is, and I know there's a lot more to unpack there, and I know there's a lot more things you can go into detail about. But I'll definitely be tuning into some of your things a little more, because this is, one, you're like a big brother to me, even though we, through the years, obviously family happens, life happens. I don't know how I was supposed to get a hold of you when you're on a 2-inch mattress anyway in Canada. I'm glad. I'm very thankful that you took time to not only be on our podcast, Sal, but share that with us. And I will definitely do a better job of keeping in touch.
Yeah, please.
That was some powerful stuff.
Thank you guys for having me. And Steve, I know it, this isn't a self-depreciating comment, but I wasn't a good person back at West Point necessarily, and I did some shitty things and I made some shitty decisions, and I know I hurt you at times, and I just want to publicly acknowledge that and honor you in the process and say truly that I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Make amends, my brother.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. And look, we said it before, but who we were at 18, 19, 20, and 21, I mean, it's just, if you're the same person at 34, 35, 36, 37, you're probably not doing what life was supposed to happen. So, Caleb, you'll always be a brother to me, man. Like,
I appreciate you, Steve.
I will never, that'll never change. There's nothing that can happen that can change that. So I just, again, you sharing that stuff, man, it's powerful. And I hope somebody watches this and it changes their life, because that's how powerful your story can be. So I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that just look at you, Caleb, as Caleb Campbell, the last Army football player to be drafted, right? And then when you hear your story, I think that's going to really it's a very powerful. I think it's really going to open up people's eyes to say, hey, it's not all about that, right? There's more to life than just about the NFL here, because I know like right now I wrote a story this week about Andre Carter possibly being the first round draft pick next year, right?
Yeah.
And I'm looking like there hasn't been a first round draft pick in Army since the 40s when there was the glory days and stuff. But hearing your story, you have to be all right with yourself before there's certain things that have to be in place for you to get to that level, not just skill wise and physical wise. And we learned that today. I mean, it is incredible, man. Guys, if you're watching this podcast, please check out our YouTube channel. I don't know if we have as powerful a discussion as this one, but we have some really good chats on our podcast. From maybe some of your teammates. I was looking at Greg Washington back in the day. I've had Greg Washington on this podcast. He's a guy that is doing
great work.
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of guys. But Caleb, man, I'm so glad we were able to get you on. Check this out. It's going to be on our podcast audio platforms too. And Caleb, when you're done, when this book, I was going to ask you about the book real quick. When the book comes out, please let us know. We'll definitely get the word out on it. I mean, I think it's going to be something that people are going to want to read, and please let us know that too. So it's been great having you on. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Sal. So great to connect with you both.
Yeah, Caleb, we'll stay in touch, brother.